They say a man builds his life like he builds a house, one careful brick at a time, each one measured, mortared, made to last. I should know. I'm Josh Johnson, and I've built half of Iowa Falls with these hands. 63 years of calluses, concrete, and certainty. 63 years of believing that if you build something right, if you use the proper foundation, it stands forever. God, what a fool. The morning it all crumbled started like any other Tuesday. Coffee black, newspaper folded, Angela's nervous laughter drifting from the kitchen where she helped my wife, Martha, prepare breakfast. My daughter-in-law, beautiful, bright Angela, 6 months pregnant with what would be our second grandchild. Timothy, my son, sat across from me, his hand on her growing belly. That dopey grin men get when they think they've conquered the world by planting their seed. Dad, he said, we're thinking of naming him Josh after you. If you feel like this story might reach you somehow, follow the channel. That way, you help me bring more stories like this, and we grow with every life we learn from. I remember the warmth that spread through my chest. Pride, they call it. That dangerous delusion that makes you think you've done something right in this world. Little Jim, our 10-year-old grandson, was upstairs, probably lost in those video games Angela pretended to hate but secretly encouraged. The perfect family portrait, ready for framing. Dr. Harrison called at 11:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I was reviewing blueprints for the new municipal building when Martha handed me the phone, her face pale as fresh drywall. It's about the genetic testing, she whispered. Angela had insisted on it, something about family medical history, being thorough, being safe, being a liar, as it turned out. Josh, doctor. Harrison's voice had that careful quality doctors use when they're about to detonate your existence. There's been a discrepancy in the prenatal genetic panel. Could you and Timothy come to my office today? The drive there was silent. Timothy chatted about nursery color sage green. He thought gender neutral but sophisticated. I watched Iowa Falls pass by the window. The elementary school I'd renovated. The shopping center I'd built from nothing. The church where Timothy married Angela 4 years ago. Every structure a testament to permanence. Every beam and bolt a lie. Dr. Harrison didn't dance around it. Good man, Harrison. We'd known each other 30 years. He'd delivered Timothy, actually, back when his hair wasn't gray and my dreams weren't delusions. The genetic markers don't match, he said, sliding papers across his mahogany desk. Timothy, I'm sorry, but you're not the biological father. You know what's funny about collapse? It's quiet. Buildings don't scream when they fall. They whisper. A small crack, a subtle shift. Then gravity does its patient work. Timothy's face didn't shatter. It simply need, like someone had pulled the plug on his soul and watched everything drain out. There must be a mistake, he said. Then again, quieter. There must be a mistake. But there wasn't. There never is. Not with science. Not with numbers. Not with the kind of truth that comes printed on medical letterhead with percentages and certainties. The ride home was different. Timothy drove while I sat shotgun, watching his knuckles go white on the steering wheel, then red, then white again. A kind of Morse code of masculine rage, tapping out messages neither of us could decode. Don't do anything stupid, I told him when we pulled into my driveway. Like what, Dad? Like believing my wife? Like planning a future? Like picking out fucking sage green paint? His voice cracked on green, and suddenly he was 10 years old again, crying because his goldfish died, because the world was bigger and crueler than he'd imagined. I should have gone inside, should have held my son, called my wife, begun the careful work of rebuilding. Instead, I sat in my truck after Timothy drove away, engine running, air conditioning fighting the August heat, and I made a decision. You see, I know about weight-bearing walls. I know which ones you can remove without consequence, and which ones, when compromised, bring everything down. Angela had just removed one, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. She didn't know that before I was a grandfather, before I was a father, before I was anything soft or forgiving, I was a builder. And builders understand destruction better than anyone. The investigator's name was Cole Morrison, recommended by a lawyer who owed me favors from a contract dispute years back. Cole looked exactly like you'd expect. Forgettable face, decent suit, Eyes that had seen too much and cared too little. Perfect. I need everything, I told him over coffee at a diner 2 towns over. The who, the when, the why. But especially the who. Cheating spouse? Cole asked, already bored. Cheating daughter-in-law. But that's just the beginning. I want to know what he eats for breakfast, where he banks, what he fears. I want to know him better than he knows himself. Cole's expression shifted slightly interest, maybe even respect. That's not a divorce case, Mr. Johnson. That's something else. Yes, I said, sliding him a check that made his eyebrows rise. It is. 3 weeks. That's all it took for Cole to return with a folder thick enough to build a house on. Mario Castellano, of course. His name was Mario. 34 years old. Silver tongue, silver Audi, silver cufflinks that caught the light when he showed houses to bored housewives. Specialized in high-end properties. The kind with wine cellars and yoga studios. The kind Angela always lingered over in the real estate section of the Sunday paper. But here's where it got interesting. Really interesting. Mario wasn't just selling houses. He was selling dreams financed by nightmares. Fraudulent mortgage applications. Tax evasion that would make Al Capone blush. And this was the beautiful part: illegal waste dumping from his renovation projects. Seems Mario had a side business flipping houses, cutting corners sharper than a surgeon's scalpel. Asbestos, lead paint, contaminated soil, all of it buried or dumped in protected wetlands outside town. There's more, Cole said, producing photos that made my stomach turn and my heart sing simultaneously. Angela and Mario, tangled together in the back seat of that silver Audi, at a motel that rented by the hour, in a house he was supposedly showing her, though from the angle of her neck, the arch of her back, she was the one being shown. How long? I asked. 7 months, maybe 8. Started right around the time she got pregnant. Mathematics. Simple, cruel mathematics. She'd known from the beginning whose child she carried. Every doctor's appointment Timothy attended, every name they discussed, every time he'd talked to her belly, all of it performed for an audience of one fool. I paid Cole, shook his hand, and drove home with that folder beside me like a passenger, like a friend, like a loaded gun. Martha noticed something was wrong. Wives always do. You've been distant, she said one evening, her hand on my shoulder as I stared at blueprints I wasn't really seeing. Big project, I lied. Complicated foundation. She kissed my forehead, and I smelled her lavender shampoo, the same brand she'd used for 35 years. Some things, at least, were real. Some foundations held. Timothy was falling apart in slow motion. He'd moved back home, sleeping in his childhood bedroom with its participation trophies and faded posters. Angela called, constantly crying, pleading, swearing it meant nothing, that Mario meant nothing, that the baby was still Timothy's in every way that mattered. Maybe I should forgive her, Timothy said one night, drunk on whiskey and sorrow, for Jim's sake, for the baby's sake. Maybe, I said, refilling his glass. Or maybe you should know the truth first. I laid it out like blueprints, every photo, every document, every sordid detail Cole had uncovered. Timothy's hand shook as he flipped through the evidence, his face cycling through colors like a broken traffic light. She met him at an open house, I explained, my voice steady as poured concrete. You were working late, remember? All those overtime shifts to save for the baby's college fund. The irony wasn't lost on him. I could see it settling into his bones. That particular kind of anger that comes from being played for a fool by someone you'd have died for. What do I do? He asked, and for the first time since Dr. Harrison's office, he looked like my son again. Not the broken boy, but the man I'd raised capable of both creation and, when necessary, demolition. First, you protect Jim, I said. He doesn't need to know specifics, just that Mom and Dad need some time apart. Second, you document everything, every text, every lie, every attempt at manipulation. And third, I paused, letting the weight of it settle. You let me handle Mario. Dad, no violence, I assured him. I'm too old for prison and too smart for anything traceable. But Mario Castellano is about to learn what happens when you destroy the wrong man's family. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to the EPA, an anonymous tip about illegal dumping in protected wetlands. complete with GPS coordinates and photographic evidence. The second was to the IRC's Concerned Citizens Report about unreported income and fraudulent business expenses, with enough documentation to keep them busy for years. The third was to the State Real Estate Board questions about whether Mr. Castellano's license should be reviewed given certain irregularities in his transactions. Then I waited. Patience is a builder's virtue. You don't rush concrete. You let it cure. You don't force joints. You let them settle. You don't reveal your hand until the foundation is set and the frame is true. 2 weeks later, the EPA showed up at one of Mario's renovation sites with a warrant and hazmat suits. They found enough violations to fund their department for a year. The IRS followed a week after that, freezing his accounts, seizing his silver Audi as potential evidence. The real estate board suspended his license pending investigation, but it wasn't done. Not nearly. See, Cole had found something else in his investigation, something delicious. Mario had a wife. Ex-wife, technically, but divorce proceedings that had been mysteriously stalled for 2 years. Seems Mario didn't want to split his assets, so he'd been hiding income, transferring properties to shell companies, the whole 9 yards. His ex-wife's lawyer received an anonymous package with enough evidence to reopen everything with extreme prejudice. The beautiful thing about dominoes is that once they start falling, they don't stop. Each revelation triggered another investigation. Each investigation uncovered another crime. Mario's business partners distanced themselves. His clients fled. His reputation, the carefully constructed facade of success, crumbled like cheap mortar. Angela, meanwhile, was living with her parents in Minnesota, calling Timothy daily, begging for forgiveness that wasn't his to give anymore. She'd left when I presented her with a simple choice. Leave quietly, tell Timothy the truth, and start over somewhere else. Or have every single person in Iowa Falls receive a detailed summary of her activities, complete with photographs suitable for framing. "You're destroying me," she'd sobbed. "No," I'd corrected, my voice steady as a level. "You destroyed yourself. I'm just cleaning up the job site." The baby was born on a cold Tuesday in November, a girl, despite everyone's assumptions. Angela named her Sophia. Mario wasn't there for the birth. He was in federal custody, awaiting trial on charges that his lawyer described as extensive and concerning. The EPA alone was seeking millions in cleanup costs. The IRS wanted their pound of flesh plus interest. The ex-wife wanted everything else. Timothy filed for divorce the day after Sophia was born. Clean, simple paperwork that gave Angela primary custody but stripped her of any claim to their shared assets. She didn't fight it. How could she? We had enough evidence to bury her reputation deeper than Mario's toxic waste. Jim took it hard, but kids are resilient. They're like green wood, they bend but don't break. Timothy enrolled him in therapy, spent more time with him, taught him about trust and betrayal in terms a 10-year-old could understand without being scarred. Why did Mom leave? Jim asked me one afternoon while helping me in my workshop. Sometimes people build things wrong, I told him, handing him a piece of sandpaper. And when that happens, you have to tear it down and start over. It's not fun, but it's necessary. Like Mario's houses? Jim asked. He'd heard enough around town to piece together parts of the story. Exactly like Mario's houses, I agreed. Martha figured it out. Of course. Wives always do. She found the folder I'd hidden in my workshop, saw the methodical notes I'd made, the timeline of destruction I'd orchestrated. You did this, she said. Not a question. Yes. All of it? Every last piece. She was quiet for a long moment, standing in the doorway of my workshop where I'd built so many things over the years, furniture for our home, toys for Timothy when he was young, a rocking horse for Jim that still sat in the corner. Good, she said finally, and kissed me with the fierce pride of a woman who'd chosen her partner well. Mario's trial made the news local boy makes bad, that sort of thing. He got 7 years federal time, plus state charges pending. His assets were liquidated to pay fines and restitution. The silver Audi went at auction. I heard one of his former clients bought it for a song, just for the satisfaction. Angela moved to California, eventually, as far from Iowa as she could get while staying continental. She sends Timothy photos of Sophia sometimes. He doesn't respond, but he doesn't throw them away either. They go in a box in the attic, evidence of a life that might have been, blueprints for a house that was never built. And me? I went back to work. There's something healing about construction, about taking raw materials and making something solid, something real. The municipal building project moved forward. I underbid it. Actually, sometimes the work itself is payment, but I'm different now. Older, certainly, but that's not it. I see the cracks now in buildings, in people, in the elaborate fictions we construct and call our lives. I test every joint, verify every measurement, trust nothing that hasn't been proven twice. Timothy's dating again, a teacher from gym school, actually. Nice woman, genuine laugh, no interest in real estate. He introduced her to me last week over dinner, nervous as a teenager. What do you think, Dad? He asked afterward. I think, I said, carefully, that everybody deserves a second chance to build something better. He smiled at that, and for a moment, I saw the man he was becoming, scarred, but stronger, like a weld that's been properly reinforced. People in town still talk about what happened to Mario Castellano, how quickly he fell, how completely he was destroyed. They chalk it up to karma, to justice, to the inevitable consequence of living wrong. They don't know about the architect behind his demolition, and they never will. Because here's what I learned at 63, after building half a town and watching my family nearly crumble. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or violent or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, methodical, and devastating. Sometimes it's simply showing someone the natural consequences of their actions, accelerated and amplified until they can't escape them. Mario thought he was a player in a game of seduction and conquest. He didn't realize he was actually in a different game, entirely, one where the rules were written in building codes and tax law, where the referee wore a federal badge, where the penalty for losing was everything. I still drive by the wetlands sometimes, where they're doing the environmental cleanup from Mario's dumping. It'll take years to fully restore, they say. Millions of dollars. Every square foot of contaminated soil removed and replaced. Every damaged ecosystem carefully rebuilt. It seems fitting, really. Mario spent months contaminating my family's life with his poison. Now he gets to watch from a federal cell while professionals clean up his actual poison, billing him for every cubic yard of earth they have to move. There's a poetic justice to it that appeals to the part of me that still believes in balance, in fairness, in the idea that what you build matters less than how you build it. Jim asked me recently if I believe in forgiveness. We were working on a birdhouse together, his hand steady now, careful with the wood glue. I believe, I told him, in consequences. Forgiveness comes after those, if it comes at all. Did you forgive Mom? He asked quietly. I'm working on it, I said, which was true enough. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean letting someone back into your life to hurt you again. He nodded, processing this in that serious way kids do when they're forced to grow up too fast. Did you forgive Mario? He asked. I thought about that for a moment, about the man sitting in federal prison. His empire of lies collapsed, his future mortgage to pay for his past. Mario doesn't need my forgiveness, I said finally. He needs to forgive himself, and that's going to take a lot longer than 7 years. The birdhouse turned out beautiful, solid construction, weather-resistant, built to last. We hung it in the oak tree behind my workshop, where I can see it from my window. Birds moved in within a week, building their nest with the patient certainty of creatures who know their home is secure. Martha says I'm different now, quieter, more thoughtful. She's right. When you've orchestrated someone's complete destruction, when you've played God with another person's life, it changes you. Not necessarily for worse, but definitely not for better. Just ... Different. I still build things. Houses, mostly, but also relationships. Slowly and carefully with Timothy and Jim. Trust, grain by grain with Martha, who stood by me through all of it. A new life from the ashes of the old one. Phoenix-like, but less dramatic. More like urban renewal than mythological rebirth. Timothy brought Sophia to see Jim last month. First time. She's got Angela's eyes, but Timothy's nose, somehow. Jim held her carefully, like she might break, or like he might. She's my sister, he said. Not a question, but a statement of fact he was trying to accept. Half-sister, Timothy corrected gently. No, Jim said firmly. She's my sister. It's not her fault. And in that moment, I saw the man Jim would become better than his father, better than me, able to separate the sins of the parents from the innocence of children. It gave me hope that maybe this whole mess hadn't poisoned everything, that maybe something good could still grow from contaminated soil if you were careful enough, patient enough. The municipal building is almost finished now. It's my best work, honestly. Every joint perfect, every angle true. There's a dedication plaque going up next week. They wanted to put my name on it, but I declined. Some things are better left unsigned, their creator anonymous, their origin story untold. Like revenge, for instance. People think revenge is about anger, about heat, about passion. It's not. Real revenge is cold, calculated, and clinical. It's about removing someone from your life so thoroughly that they might as well have never existed. It's about protecting what's yours with the kind of methodical destruction that leaves no room for comebacks or second chances. Mario Castellano learned that lesson. Angela, too, in her way. They thought they were playing house with my family's future, but they were actually playing with fire in a structure made of matchsticks. I'm not proud of what I did. Pride is for builders who create. I became, temporarily, something else. An architect of destruction. A demolition expert with a personal stake in the rubble. But I'm not ashamed either. When someone threatens what you've built, when they contaminate your foundation with their poison, you have two choices. Accept the damage or remove the threat. I chose removal. Complete, thorough, irreversible removal. Would I do it again? That's the question Martha never asks, but always wonders. I can see it in her eyes sometimes when she watches me work. When she sees the methodical way I approach problems now, the answer is yes. Without hesitation, without regret, without a moment's doubt. Because here's the truth about building things. It's not enough to create something beautiful. You also have to protect it from those who would tear it down for sport, for pleasure, for the simple thrill of destruction. Mario thought he was just having an affair. He was actually declaring war on everything I'd spent 63 years building. He brought a matchstick to that fight. I brought a controlled demolition. The last time I saw him was at the sentencing. He looked smaller somehow, like prison had already started its work of reduction. His silver cufflinks were gone, replaced by steel ones that didn't catch the light at all. He saw me in the gallery, and his face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, fear, and finally, understanding. He knew. In that moment, he knew who had orchestrated his downfall. Not the how. He'd probably never figured that out entirely, but the who and the why. I nodded once, a builder acknowledging the completion of a project. He looked away, and that was that. We've never spoken, never will. What would be the point? The work speaks for itself. Jim's 12 now, taller every time I see him, voice starting to crack in that painful adolescent way. He still helps me in the workshop sometimes. His hands steadier, his understanding deeper. We don't talk about that year much. The year everything fell apart and got rebuilt. But it's there between us. A shared understanding that sometimes things break, and sometimes they get fixed, and sometimes they get replaced entirely. Grandpa, he asked me recently, do you think people can change? Sure, I said, measuring a piece of lumber. People change all the time. The question is whether they change for better or worse, and whether you're going to stick around to find out. Mom says she's changed, he said quietly. Angela had been writing to him, letters that Timothy screened before passing along. Apologies, mostly. Explanations that explain nothing. The desperate words of a woman who'd lost everything and was only now understanding what everything meant. Maybe she has, I said, but changing doesn't erase what was done. It just means maybe you don't do it again. Do you think she loved Mario? He asked, and there was something in his voice that broke my heart. The need to understand, to make sense of the senseless. I think, I said carefully, that sometimes people confuse excitement with love, attention with affection, novelty with happiness. Your mom got confused. Mario took advantage of that confusion, and everyone paid the price. Especially Mario, Jim said with a darkness that shouldn't exist in a 12-year-old's voice. Especially Mario, I agreed. We worked in silence after that, the comfortable quiet of men who understand each other, who share more than blood, who share the knowledge of how quickly things can fall apart and how carefully they must be rebuilt. The sun sets earlier now, autumn coming on with its promise of change and decay. I watch it from my workshop, the light slanting through windows I installed myself, illuminating tools I've used for decades, casting shadows that lengthen like the years. Martha brings me coffee sometimes, stands behind me with her hands on my shoulders, looking out at the town we've helped build together. Neither of us mentions that period 2 years ago when I became someone else, someone darker and more dangerous than the man she married. But she knows, and I know she knows, and somehow that's enough. Any regrets? She asked once, just once. No, I said, and meant it. Regret is for people who acted in haste or anger. Everything I did was deliberate. And if you could go back, I'd do it cleaner, I admitted, more efficient. Less time wasted on anger before getting to the practical work of dismantling. She squeezed my shoulders and kissed the top of my head, and I smelled lavender and understood that some things survive even the most complete destruction. Timothy's getting married next spring. The teacher, Rebecca, said yes last month. They're planning a small ceremony, family only. Nothing like the elaborate production his first wedding was. He asked me to be his best man. You sure? I asked. That didn't work out so well last time. Last time you weren't really my best man, he said. You were just playing the part. This time, after everything, you actually are. We were sitting on the porch of the house I'd helped him buy, a fixer-upper on the edge of town, far from the home he'd shared with Angela. It needed work, but the bones were good. Strong foundation, solid frame, just cosmetic damage that could be repaired with time and effort. Besides, he added, who else would I ask? You're the one who saved me. You saved yourself, I corrected. I just cleared the debris. Dad, he said, and there was weight to it. Years of understanding compressed into a single word. We both know what you did. Not the details, maybe, but enough. And I need you to know. He paused, searching for words. I need you to know I'm grateful. Not happy about it, not proud of it, but grateful. You protected Jim and me when I couldn't protect myself. That's what fathers do, I said simply. No, he said. That's what you do. There's a difference. We sat there as the sun set, watching the town lights come on one by one, each one representing a life, a family, a story as complex as our own. Somewhere out there, Angela was living her new life with Sophia, trying to rebuild from nothing. Somewhere else, Mario was sitting in a cell, counting days and calculating losses. And here we were, Timothy and I, still standing despite everything, still building, still planning, still believing that tomorrow could be better than today if you worked hard enough and were careful enough and protected what mattered. I love you, Dad, Timothy said suddenly, the words surprising us both. I love you too, son, I replied, and meant it more than I'd ever meant anything in my life, because that's what this was all about, really. Not revenge, though that was part of it. Not justice, though that mattered too. It was about love, the fierce, protective, dangerous kind of love that would burn down the world to keep your family safe. Mario and Angela thought they were just having an affair. They were actually testing the limits of that love, pushing to see how far a quiet man could be pushed before he stopped being quiet and started being something else entirely. They found out. Now, 2 years later, the rubble has been cleared and new things are growing. Timothy's wedding will be small but perfect. Jim is becoming a young man with his own sense of right and wrong. Martha and I are growing old together, our foundation tested but holding. And somewhere in California, a little girl named Sophia is growing up without a father because he thought he could play games with other people's lives without consequences. I think about her sometimes, this innocent casualty of adult failures. Maybe someday, when she's older, when the wounds have healed into scars and the scars have faded to stories, she meet her half-brother. Maybe Jim will tell her about the grandfather she never knew, the one who loved so fiercely he became someone terrible to protect what he loved. Or maybe not. Maybe some stories are better left untold, their architects anonymous, their blueprints burned. But if she ever does learn about me, about what I did, I hope she understands this. I didn't destroy her father because I enjoyed it. I destroyed him because he threatened to destroy my son. And that's a line that once crossed cannot be uncrossed. Every man has his limits. Mario found mine. He probably wishes he hadn't, but wishes are like badly mixed concrete. They don't hold weight when it matters. The municipal building had its ribbon cutting yesterday. The mayor made a speech about community and construction, about building for the future while honoring the past. I stood in the back, anonymous in the crowd, watching people admire the clean lines and solid construction of something I'd built. Beautiful work, someone said beside me. Whoever built this knew what they were doing. Yes, I agreed. They did, because I do know what I'm doing. I've always known. Whether I'm building or destroying, I do it with the same methodical precision, the same attention to detail, the same understanding that every action has consequences that ripple outward like cracks in a foundation. Mario's cracks spread until his whole life collapsed. Angela's spread until she had to run to another state to escape them. But my family's cracks, the ones they caused, those we filled with something stronger than what was there before. They say scar tissue is stronger than regular tissue. They say bones heal stronger at the breakpoint. They say a building properly repaired after damage can be more solid than one that was never tested. They're right. We're stronger now. Timothy and Jim and I scarred, certainly. Changed, absolutely. But stronger in the ways that matter, the ways that last. I'm back in my workshop now, working on a cradle for Timothy's future children. Rebecca wants a big family, she says. 3 or 4 kids. Timothy lights up when she says it. The ghost of his first family finally exorcised by the promise of a second. The cradle is oak, solid and simple, built to last generations. Each joint is perfect, each surface smooth as silk. It's a promise in wood form that some things endure, that some foundations hold, that sometimes, despite everything, you get to build again. As I work, I think about legacy. Not the buildings scattered across Iowa Falls with my hidden signature in their bones, but the real legacy, the son who survived betrayal, the grandson who learned to separate love from trust, the wife who stood by me even when I became someone she didn't recognize. And yes, the ruins of Mario Castellano's life, a monument to what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness, silence for acceptance, patience for passivity. I'm not a violent man. Never raised a hand in anger, never even raised my voice much. But violence isn't always physical. Sometimes it's a phone call to the right agency. Sometimes it's evidence delivered to the right people. Sometimes it's simply letting someone face the consequences they've been running from. Mario ran from a lot of things. His ex-wife, his taxes, his environmental responsibilities. He thought he could keep running. Maybe run right through my family and out the other side. He was wrong. The cradle is almost finished. Tomorrow I'll apply the first coat of finish, then sand, then finish again, layer after layer until it glows with that deep luster that only comes from patience and repetition, like revenge, actually. Layer after layer of careful planning until the final product is something beautiful in its completeness, terrible in its thoroughness. But I'm done with revenge now. That chapter is closed. That building demolished. That project complete. What I'm building now is different hope, maybe. Or just the simple faith that tomorrow can be better than yesterday if you're willing to work for it. Jim stops by after school sometimes. He's got a girlfriend now. A shy girl named Emma who laughs at his jokes and doesn't know anything about his family's history. He brings her by the workshop occasionally. Proud of the birdhouses and small furniture we've built together. This is my grandpa, he tells her. He builds things. Such a simple description. So incomplete and yet so entirely accurate. I build things. I built a life with Martha that survived the worst test imaginable. I built a relationship with Timothy that weathered betrayal and emerged stronger. I built a bond with Jim that transcends the mess his parents made. And when someone threatened to demolish all of that, I built something else, a trap, perhaps, or a maze, or just a series of dominoes arranged so precisely that one phone call could bring it all down. Mario's probably figured out some of it by now. Prison gives you time to think, to trace back the threads of your destruction. He probably knows about the EPA call, might have guessed about the IRS tip. The rest the ex-wife, the real estate board, the careful orchestration of his complete undoing. that might remain a mystery. Good. Let him wonder. Let him spend his 7 years trying to understand how one affair could trigger such complete devastation. Let him learn what I learned at 63, that every action has consequences. And sometimes those consequences come with compound interest. Angela knows, I think, not the details, but the shape of it. She was there when I gave her the choice: leave or be exposed. She saw something in my eyes that day, something that made her pack without argument and disappear to Minnesota within 48 hours. "You're not who I thought you were," she said as she left. "No," I agreed. "I'm exactly who I've always been. You just never had reason to see it before." She flinched at that, understanding finally that the quiet grandfather who'd welcomed her into our family was the same man now exiling her from it. Same hands that had held her baby shower gifts were now holding evidence of her betrayal. Same voice that had called her daughter was now telling her to leave and never come back. "Will Timothy ever forgive me?" she asked at the door. "That's not for me to say," I replied. "But forgiveness and reconciliation are different things. He might manage one. I wouldn't count on both." She left then, taking nothing but clothes and the baby growing inside her. Everything else, the house, the car, the life she built on a foundation of lies, all of it stayed behind like evidence at a crime scene. The cradle is finished now, glowing in the afternoon light. I run my hands over it, feeling for imperfections that aren't there. It's perfect, or as close to perfect as human hands can make something. Rebecca's pregnant. They told us last night over dinner, Timothy's face glowing with a joy I hadn't seen since before Dr. Harrison's phone call. This time it's real, built on truth instead of deception, foundation properly laid. "We want you to be involved," Rebecca said, reaching for my hand across the table. "Really involved. Grandpa Josh, who builds things." I squeezed her hand, this woman who's helping my son rebuild his life, and felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years, uncomplicated happiness. "I'd like that," I said. Later, Timothy helped me load the cradle into his truck. "Dad," he said, "I need to tell you something." I waited. "I heard from Maria's lawyer yesterday. He wants to make a deal. Information about Angela in exchange for a reduced sentence." I kept my face neutral, but inside, something cold and calculating stirred, the same part of me that had orchestrated his downfall. "What kind of information?" I asked. Apparently, she wasn't his only situation. He kept records. Videos even. Timothy's jaw clenched. "He wants to trade them for time off." I thought about that for a moment. Mario, desperate in his cell, trying to bargain with the last chips he had left, still not understanding that the game was already over, that he'd lost everything worth losing. "What did you tell the lawyer?" I asked. "Nothing yet. I wanted to talk to you first." "Tell him no," I said simply. "Tell him to rot." Timothy looked at me, something like awe in his eyes. "You're not curious, not even a little?" "Curiosity," I said, "is how this whole mess started. Angela's gone, Mario's finished, and you're rebuilding. What could he possibly tell us that would improve any of that?" Timothy nodded slowly. "You're right. It's just part of me wants to know everything. Every detail of how stupid I was." "You weren't stupid," I said firmly. "You were trusting. There's a difference. Stupid is what Mario was, thinking he could play these games without consequences. Trusting is what you were, believing your wife would honor her vows. One is a character flaw. The other is a virtue that someone exploited." We finished loading the cradle in silence, but it was comfortable, the kind that comes from understanding. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood in my workshop, tools hung precisely where they'd always been, everything in its place except my peace of mind. Mario trying to make deals meant he was getting desperate. Desperate men do dangerous things. I made one more phone call. Cole Morrison answered on the second ring, despite the late hour. Men like Cole don't really sleep. They just wait for the next job. "Mr. Johnson," he said, unsurprised. "Been a while." "Mario Castellano is trying to make deals," I said without preamble. "I need to know what he has and who else might be interested in it." "That'll cost," Cole said. "Bill me." 3 days later, Cole called back. "Your instincts were right. Mario's been shopping information to anyone who'll listen. But here's the interesting part. He's not just trying to reduce his sentence. He's trying to pay for protection." "Protection from what?" Seems Mr. Castellano made enemies in more than just Iowa Falls. Some of his real estate deals involve people who don't handle betrayal as civilized as you did. The kind who solve problems with shallow graves instead of federal prosecutors. I felt no sympathy. Mario had built his house of cards tall and wide, never considering what would happen if it fell. There's more, Cole continued. Angela's been in contact with him. Phone calls to the prison. She's promising to wait for him. That made me laugh, actually laugh out loud in my empty workshop. Angela, who couldn't wait for Timothy to work late without falling into another man's bed, was now playing the devoted girlfriend to a convicted felon. They deserve each other, I said. There's one more thing, Cole said, his voice changing, and you're not going to like it. I waited. Mario's been talking to a journalist. Someone from Chicago who thinks there's a bigger story here. David versus Goliath kind of thing, local businessman destroyed by powerful construction family. He's painting himself as the victim. The cold thing inside me stirred again, but I pushed it down. I was done with revenge. Done with the careful orchestration of destruction. Let him talk, I said. Nobody cares about the sob story of a convicted environmental criminal and tax cheat. You sure? Cole asked. I could make some calls. Make sure the story never sees print. No, I said firmly. I'm done with that. Whatever happens now, happens. But the universe, it seems, has a sense of humor. The journalist showed up 2 weeks later, a young woman named Sarah Chun with intelligent eyes and a recorder that she placed on my desk like a challenge. Mr. Johnson, she said, I'm writing a story about Mario Castellano's downfall. I'd like your perspective. My perspective, I said carefully, is that Mr. Castellano made choices and faced consequences. That's not a story. That's just life. Some would say the consequences were disproportionate, she pressed. He lost everything over an affair. He lost everything, I corrected, over environmental crimes, tax evasion, and fraud. The affair was just what brought attention to his other activities. She studied me for a long moment. You know, Mr. Johnson, Mario claims you orchestrated his downfall, that you systematically destroyed his life as revenge for the affair. I met her gaze steadily. Mr. Castellano seems to have confused correlation with causation. His life fell apart because he built it on a foundation of lies and crimes. I'm just a grandfather who builds things. I don't have the time or inclination for revenge. And yet, she said, the timing is curious. Everything happened so quickly after the affair was discovered. Funny thing about foundations built on lies, I said, standing to signal the interview was over. Once one crack appears, the whole structure tends to collapse pretty fast. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual buildings to construct. She left, but I knew she'd be back. Journalists are like water. They find every crack, every weakness, every story that wants to be told. Martha was worried. What if she finds something? There's nothing to find, I said, which was true. I'd been careful. Everything I'd done had been through proper channels. Anonymous tips that anyone could have made. There was no trail leading back to me except logic and suspicion, and neither of those would hold up in court or print. Besides, I added, who's going to believe Mario? A convicted criminal trying to blame someone else for his own crimes? But Sarah Chun was persistent. She interviewed Timothy, who told her about betrayal and moving forward. She interviewed Jim's teacher, who praised our family's resilience. She even found Angela in California, who apparently cried through the entire phone call and blamed everything on Mario's seduction. The story, when it finally ran, was not what anyone expected. The architect of his own destruction. How Mario Castellano's web of lies unraveled, read the headline. Sarah Chun had done her homework. She'd found 3 other women Mario had been involved with, 2 more illegal dump sites, and a pattern of fraud going back years. She'd discovered that the EPA had been investigating him for months before my call, that the IRS had flagged his accounts a year earlier. My anonymous tips, it turned out, had simply accelerated investigations that were already in motion. I was just the spark that lit a fire that had been building for years. At the end of the article, there was a single quote from me. Mr. Castellano wants to blame others for his downfall. But the truth is simpler. When you build your life on crimes and lies, eventually someone notices. I feel sorry for everyone he hurt, including my family. But mostly, I feel sorry for his daughter, who will grow up without a father because he chose crime over conscience. Mario called from prison that night. I don't know how he got my number, but there he was on the other end of the line, breathing heavily like he'd run a marathon. "You think you've won," he said without preamble. "I think," I said calmly, "that winning and losing are your terms, not mine. I just wanted you gone." Mission accomplished. "I'll be out in 5 years with good behavior," he threatened. "And when you are," I interrupted, "you'll be a middle-aged felon with no money, no career, no prospects, and a daughter who doesn't know you exist. You'll probably violate parole within 6 months and end up back inside. But sure, Mario, keep thinking about revenge. It's worked out so well for you so far. You destroyed me," he said, his voice cracking. "No," I said, allowing myself just a moment of satisfaction. "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy anyone else in the process." I hung up then and blocked the number. Some conversations aren't worth finishing. Timothy's baby was born in the spring, a boy they named David, not after me, which was fine. This family had had enough of naming children after their ancestors. Better to let them forge their own paths. The christening was small, family-owned. Rebecca's parents flew in from Oregon. Good people who knew nothing about our family's recent history and didn't need to. Jim held his baby brother with the careful pride of someone who'd learned that family was both more fragile and more resilient than he'd imagined. "He looks like you," Martha told Timothy, and it was true. David had the Johnson jaw, the Johnson nose, the Johnson stubborn set to his mouth even at 3 months old. "Poor kid," Timothy joked, but his eyes were wet. Later, at the reception in our backyard, I watched my family, the one that had survived, the one we'd rebuilt. Timothy and Rebecca laughing at something Jim said. Martha holding David with the practiced ease of a grandmother who'd done this before. Jim's girlfriend Emma helping set out food, already part of the family in that easy way some people have. This is what I protected. This is what I'd fought for in my cold, calculated way. Not with fists or fury, but with phone calls and evidence, with patience and precision. Angela sent a card. Just a simple congratulations with no return address, though the postmark was from San Diego. Inside, in handwriting I recognized, she'd written, "I hope he has a better father than Sophia did. I'm sorry for everything." I showed it to Timothy, who read it once and then fed it to the shredder. "Feel better?" I asked. "No," he admitted, "but I don't feel worse, and that's progress." We stood there, father and son, watching the pieces of paper fall like snow into the recycling bin. Another small demolition, another step forward. "Dad," Timothy said suddenly, "what if David asks about this someday? About what happened to our family when he was born? Then we tell him," I said simply. "Not everything, not the ugly details, but enough. We tell him that sometimes people make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes have consequences, and sometimes families break apart but can be rebuilt stronger. And if he asks about what you did," I thought about that for a moment, about the grandson who'd someday be old enough to understand that his grandfather had been both protector and destroyer, both builder and demolition expert. "Then I tell him the truth," I said, "that I'm just a man who builds things, and sometimes, to build something new, you have to clear away the old, even if the clearing is painful, even if it leaves scars." Timothy nodded, understanding in a way he couldn't have before all this happened. The party continued around us, laughter and light, family and future. Jim was teaching Emma to play cornhole, losing on purpose to make her smile. Martha was telling Rebecca's parents about the municipal building, pride evident in her voice. David slept in his carrier, unaware of the history that had shaped his existence, the violence done in service of his future peace. And I stood there, Josh Johnson, builder of buildings and destroyer of the man who tried to destroy my son, feeling neither pride nor shame, just a quiet satisfaction that the work was done. The next morning, I was back in my workshop, sketching plans for a playground I wanted to build in the backyard. Something for David when he got older, for the other grandchildren that might come. Swings and slides and monkey bars, all of it overbuilt and over-engineered, because that's how I do things now, with a margin of safety wide enough to accommodate betrayal. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Johnson? This is Monica Castellano, Mario's ex-wife. I almost hung up, but curiosity won. What can I do for you, Mrs. Castellano? I wanted to thank you, she said simply. I know what you did. Not all of it, but enough. You gave me the evidence I needed to finally break free, to get what my daughter and I deserve. I don't know what you're talking about, I said automatically. She laughed, not unkindly. Of course you don't, but still, thank you. Mario took years from me, years I can't get back. But at least now he can't take any more from anyone else. How's your daughter? I asked, surprising myself. She's good. Better now that the divorce is final and the assets are recovered. She go to college debt-free thanks to what we recovered from Mario's hidden accounts. Good, I said, and meant it. Another innocent saved from the wreckage. Mr. Johnson, she said before hanging up, I know you did this for your family, not for me. But sometimes doing the right thing for the wrong reasons is still doing the right thing. After she hung up, I sat in my workshop thinking about that. Had I done the right thing? Or had I simply done the necessary thing and gotten lucky that it aligned with justice? Did it matter? The playground plan spread out before me, precise and detailed. Every bolt accounted for, every angle calculated, every stress point reinforced. This is what I could control. Wood and metal and concrete shaped into something useful, something that would bring joy. The rest, Mario in his cell, Angela in her exile, the family we'd salvaged from the wreckage, that was beyond my control now. All I could do was build forward, one project at a time, one day at a time. Jim stopped by that afternoon, grown tall and starting to show the man he'd become. Grandpa, I've been thinking about what you said, about consequences. Yeah? Mario got his consequences. Mom got hers. But what about yours? It was a fair question, one I'd been waiting for him to be old enough to ask. My consequence, I said carefully, is knowing what I'm capable of, living with the knowledge that when pushed, I can become someone even I don't fully recognize. That's not nothing, Jim. That changes you. He absorbed this, then asked, Do you regret it? No, I said honestly. But I regret that it was necessary. I regret that your mom and Mario made choices that forced my hand. I regret that you had to grow up faster than you should have. I don't, he said, surprising me. I mean, I wish it hadn't happened, but I like who I'm becoming because of it. I'm careful now. I pay attention. I don't trust easily, but when I do trust, it means something. That might be too much wisdom for someone your age, I said. Maybe. He agreed. But it's mine now, earned the hard way. We worked together on the playground plans, his suggestions practical and thoughtful. He'd inherited the Johnson ability to build, to see how things fit together, to understand structure and support. Grandpa, he said as we worked, I forgive her. Mom, not for her, but for me. Carrying that anger is like building on a cracked foundation. Eventually, it affects everything else. When did you become the wise one? I asked. Learn from the best, he said, then added with a grin. Plus, therapy helps. We laughed at that, the sound carrying across the yard to where Martha was gardening, causing her to look up and smile. This was the real victory, not Mario's destruction. But this moment, this connection, this family that had survived and even thrived. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, I thought about the story we'd written, not the one Sarah Chun had published, but the real one, the one only we knew. It wasn't the story of revenge, really. It was a story of protection, of a man who'd spent 63 years believing in construction suddenly forced to master demolition. And I had mastered it, perhaps too well. But that was yesterday's story. Today's was about playgrounds and grandchildren, about Timothy's happiness with Rebecca, about Jim's growing wisdom, about Martha's unwavering support. Tomorrow's story? Well, that was still being built, one careful piece at a time, on a foundation that had been tested by earthquake and found solid. Mario would be out in a few years. Yes. Angela would probably try to reconnect eventually. Sophia would grow up and maybe someday want to know about the grandfather she'd never met. These were tomorrow's problems, tomorrow's stories. Tonight, I had dinner with my family. Tonight, Timothy would put David to bed in the cradle I'd built. Tonight, Jim would tell us about his college plans over dessert. Tonight, Martha and I would sit on our porch and watch the stars come out over the town we'd helped build. And if sometimes, in the quiet moments, I remembered the cold efficiency with which I destroyed a man's life, well, that was my burden to carry. The architect of destruction, living in the same skin as the builder of homes. Neither one erasing the other, both part of the complete structure that was Josh Johnson. I built things. Sometimes those things were homes and schools and playgrounds. And sometimes, just once, when someone threatened everything I built something else, a perfect trap. An inescapable consequence, a demolition so complete that recovery was impossible. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not sorry either. And that, perhaps, is the most honest thing I can say about the whole damn mess. The workshop is quiet now, tools in their places, plans filed away. Tomorrow I'll start on the playground, cutting wood and shaping metal into something that will last, something that will bring joy. Something that will stand as a testament to building rather than destroying. But tonight, I sit here in the gathering darkness, a builder at rest, a destroyer retired, a grandfather who did what was necessary and now lives with the consequences. And despite everything, or maybe because of everything, I'm at peace. The foundation holds. The family endures. The builder builds on. Thank you for staying with me and listening this far. Your attention is a gift. Did these minutes mean something to you? Then please, follow the channel. Every click from you is a push that helps me keep bringing stories that truly stay with us.